You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K25. It's myself, Mo Mooncey, alongside me as always on a Monday, three-time NBA champion BJ Armstrong and general manager extraordinaire, Mr. Scott Perry. How you fellas doing? Had a good weekend?
Good weekend. Filled with a lot of college basketball, Mo.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't watch as much NBA. Peaked in a few NBA games, but college basketball dominated the airwaves this weekend, as you well know.
March Madness
Interesting
has
to
been
find out from you. Yeah, interesting to find out from you on our bracket. How many teams did we get in the Sweet 16, Mo? Can you tell us that?
let me pull that up now. I
Now,
saw that Louisville
Oh,
loss straight away.
yeah,
I knew that our
exactly.
bracket was finished. There's only one correct bracket that remains in the world, apparently.
Okay, I believe that.
Let me have a look right now.
I'm just
So,
going to the Sweet 16. I know we missed a lot of games,
Sweet
leading up to.
16,
Yeah.
we had, let me pull up the correct bracket as well so I can compare. Give me 1 second, fellas. BJ, who's caught your eye in college basketball this weekend?
it's caught my eye. Well, who's caught your eye, Mo? I've been watching. Who's
Amir Khan bringing the aura. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
My brother Amir.
I could have bet you would have brought that up, Mo.
Come on, man. That's my brother, man.
Yeah.
All right, so we had Auburn going through, but we had Texas A&M, and they lost to Michigan.
Michigan. Okay, yeah, Michigan. Well, I'm happy for the Wolverines, obviously, as a former Wolverine coach. So
We had
happy that we were wrong on that.
Yeah, we had San Diego State and Michigan State. However, it's Ole Miss and Michigan State who have made it through to the Sweet 16. We
Okay.
had Florida and Maryland, and they've both made it through.
Okay.
We had Texas Tech and St. John's, but St. John's lost to Arkansas, so it's Texas Tech and Arkansas.
Mhm.
We had Duke and Alabama, but it's going to be Duke and Arizona. I don't know how that works because the bracket has
No,
changed.
Alabama. No, I don't know if the brackets changed, but both Duke and Alabama are in the Sweet 16. I do know that.
Yeah, but the bracket
Yeah,
that I've got that we filled in
Okay.
had Alabama. Oh, they're on the other side of the bracket. So the bracket changed after
Yeah.
we filled it in. Ah, interesting. So we had Duke, Alabama, Houston, and Tennessee. It's Duke, Arizona, BYU, and Alabama that have gone through.
Okay.
And then in the Midwest, we had Houston, Purdue. We had Houston, Clemson, but instead it's Houston, Purdue. And Kentucky and Tennessee, we got those ones correct.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I say we're doing about 500, just slightly over
Okay.
500.
Yeah, I mean, do we have what 18? Was you saying 8? Yeah, we probably about 10 teams we
Yeah.
picked.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hopefully, there's some more upsets and surprises on the way. But who was the fellow who hit the game winner? Who hit the game winner that everyone's talking about, whether a travel or not a travel?
Oh, Derek Queen
Derek
from
Queen.
Maryland.
Derek
Yes.
Queen.
Yeah, no, he's a name that is familiar to all NBA scouts. He may not be as known nationally to the general public, but to the NBA at large and scouts, they know who this guy is. They've been scouting him the entire year. He was a McDonald's All-American and projected lottery pick.
Yeah, they've got
This
him
year.
going in the late lottery. So that's interesting. Scott, as a general manager in the NBA, how important is success in college when it comes to drafting these players? Because a lot of guys only spend about 6 months in college these days.
Yeah. It's another piece to the puzzle, Mo. And what I like about the tournament, what I utilize that for in terms of crystallizing my evaluation of these players is how they perform under pressure. It's one game knockout now when you get to this tournament. And so, and we know that anybody can have an off game, off night, but just how they go about the competition and how do they show up in big moments. So it's another piece. Again, like to I'm a believer that you measure a player's entire body of work. There can be a lot of recency bias sometimes with the tournament. You know, a guy can have a hot tournament and it catapults him up draft boards, or he can have a poor tournament, one and done, and it drop him some. But again, this is just one moment in time because after this, you have the NBA draft combine where these guys will start to be interviewed, which was a big part of my evaluation process. You want to get to meet these guys. You know the talent. You've made assessments and judgments on terms of what this player's ability is going to be like. But you've heard me say this countless times on this show, Mo, the importance of the person along with the talent. They don't come separate, they come together. So that's the next big part of it. Going to the combine, getting a chance to interview and meet these players, and then eventually bringing them to your organization where you can spend more time with them and getting to know them personally. So, but again, I like guys that when they go to college. Again, it's just another measuring stick of what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. So great for the young kid, Derek Queen at Maryland. It's a big moment for him. Headed back to the Sweet 16, and this will be a big weekend now. The Sweet 16 weekend, the regionals. Now we're going to decide who's going to be the Final Four. So there'll be a lot, even more added pressure in these games coming up for these players to show themselves more in these type of situations and give NBA teams and their evaluators even more of a picture of what to expect possibly from these guys moving forward.
BJ, who's been your favorite team or player to watch so far amongst March Madness?
The best team has been Florida. I've kind of been saying that pretty much for a little over half of the year. Who's your favorite player? Yeah, I don't know. What's the kid Scott at Oklahoma? What's the kid? Is it Fears? Is that the kid?
Yeah.
Fears.
Well, I would have liked to seen them win. Boy, he was impressive though.
Yeah, he was, but I don't really have a favorite player. The kid VJ
Edgecombe.
Edgecombe, the kid Queen. I've been watching the kid Queen now since high school. Derek Queen and
Cooper Flag
from Duke, Cooper Flag they were teammates in high school. And so those guys, I've been watching a lot of these players. I think this is shaping up, especially up top. I think has a chance to be a pretty good draft. I kind of like this draft as it's shaping up. So there are a lot of good players. There are a lot of good players in this draft, but I'm really into the teams right now. The Florida UConn game was one of the better games I've seen in a very long time. It was truly a heavyweight fight, well coached, and Florida came out victorious, but that game could have went either way. But Florida, I think they are the best team coming into the conference. The SEC tournament, the SEC conference, I should say. I mean, they put 14 teams in the conference and in the NCAA tournament, and you can see how dominant they've been. The Big Ten has done well. And you can see now the effects of NIL, right? I just read a stat today, this morning, right before we came on the show, that says this is the first time the Sweet 16 is composed entirely of major conference teams since the Sweet 16 officially began in 1975. Only 4 different conferences are represented. Every other Sweet 16 had at least 7. So that is very significant as we're watching this. It's not so much the players, you can see the effects of NIL. You can see the effects of, what we define here in America as amateur athletics. It's being reshaped in real time right now. And, the people at the top, they are thriving because of it. So I've kind of gotten away, Mo, for the first time of really just looking for my favorite player or players, from just players that I liked or I would observe and I would stand out. But I like specific teams. Florida is the team that I like here. I like the way they play. I like the way they coach. They play with a level of toughness. They have more experienced guys, especially at the guard play. The guard play is very critical if you're going to go through this tournament. And I think they are poised to win the whole thing this year.
Well, it's interesting, from an NBA perspective. College basketball is obviously huge in evaluating these prospects, but there's a lot of guys who kind of get picked up late in a draft, second round picks, And now we're in the NBA seeing guys coming from the G League Ignite or guys coming from Overtime Elite as well. And, you have obviously Jokic, who was a second round pick in the MVP conversations. But today I want to talk a little bit about the Defensive Player of the Year conversation because the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year all season long was Victor Wembanyama, who obviously played internationally, didn't play in college. And now that he's no longer been playing since his injury, they're looking at Dyson Daniels, who came from the G League. You've got Draymond Green, who was a second round pick.
I thought he was drafted. Wasn't he drafted?
Yeah.
Wasn't he drafted?
Yeah, Dyson Daniels
was he not drafted out of
he was out of G League Ignite. Exactly.
Yeah,
he was drafted out of G League Ignite. Exactly.
He came from the Ignite. Draymond Green came from the second round of the NBA draft. Obviously not in the running this year, but I anticipate they will be in future years. The Thompson twins coming out of Overtime Elite. So there's a real mix of talent now in the NBA. There's no one set pathway to get through. But just on the Defensive Player of the Year race, who are you guys looking at now without Victor Wembanyama as the Defensive Player of the Year?
Well, Mo, you brought up some interesting names. Listen, I'm just going to deal with the names that you brought up. First, Draymond. We know Draymond's history. He's a past winner of this award, if I'm not mistaken. And he has built a career as a tremendous defensive player. The number of qualities that make Draymond an excellent defender. But you start with his toughness. But he's got a very good defensive mind too. He sees things early. He's an excellent communicator on the floor for his teammates that helped them. The Golden State over the years be a very good team defense because of his ability to communicate, his ability to switch on to multiple size positions, multiple size players. So he's just an excellent all-around defender. And it's been an amazing thing to watch a guy who may be 6'8". I'm stretching him to 6'8". He's probably 6'7", 6'6", 6'7". But to be able to guard the bigger people that he can very comfortably. He has longer arms, bigger hands, but again, he has a big heart. And a lot of times, there's the old saying, you can't measure a man's heart. And that has allowed Draymond to become an elite defender and has obviously helped this Golden State Warrior team stay relevant in the Western Conference playoff race. But then I want to pivot, though, to Dyson Daniels, who I've watched a lot this season, and the breakthrough that he has made. Watching him as a prospect at the G League Ignite, that was one of his strong suits, his ability to defend. But you could tell, he was just recently coming over from Australia. He's trying to figure out a lot of these players, the level of quickness and athleticism of the players over here with the ball. He was trying to figure that out. It took him he was figuring that out while he was in New Orleans. And now I think he really has, going to Atlanta, has really settled in as a guy, as one of the game's elite perimeter defenders. Again, he can match up 1 through 3 or 4 on the court, which is a definite benefit for your team. It makes him a unique defender. Watched him do a great job individually on guys like Jalen Brunson this year when I watched him play the Knicks. He makes them have to work for every point that they get. And that's all you can ask for a guy. A guy like Brunson is going to still score his points, but you want to try to make him shoot below his average if you can. And he's done a good job against guys like that this year. And they put him on the top perimeter player night in and night out. And he's really answered the call. Don't know if he'll win the award this year, but he definitely should be someone that, in my opinion, is going to be a first team, at worst second team all defensive player this year. So kudos to Dyson Daniels. So those are the two. You brought them up, Mo, and I just want to discuss those two. If you guys have some other names, I'd love to jump in on those as well.
Yeah, Dyson Daniels, also known as the Great Barrier Thief, the first guard with 200 steals in a season since Chris Paul in 2009. BJ, why are you laughing?
The Great Barrier Thief. Boy, I love that, Mo.
That's good, isn't it?
He has good hands, boy. He gets those hands in passing lanes. He strips guys. He does a really nice job.
He's first in steals by a country mile, first in deflections, first in stopping drives, fourth in closeouts. BJ, I have a question for you. You know, as a former guard in this league, we saw Marcus Smart win the Defensive Player of the Year award just 3 years ago. The first guard to win it since Gary Payton in '96, I believe. Why do guards struggle so much with winning this award when we've seen so many great defensive guards in the NBA?
The reason being for guards in particular is that the game was an interior game. So most of the defense for the offensive players, you played from an operating area, which as a guard, you're not playing post defense. You're not playing traditionally below the free throw line. So the versatility that's needed, you will see at other positions, the wing position, the center position. Guards aren't blocking shots. And it takes a certain size. When you mentioned Gary Payton was every bit 6'4", 6'5". So he was able to defend multiple positions, just like Marcus Smart. So, there's a couple names that I wanted to bring up
Go ahead.
here. I wanted to bring up Evan Mobley. I think he
Mhm.
should be his name should be there because of how well the Cleveland Cavaliers have played. And I also don't want to forget, in particular, two players, but their whole team in the way that they defend the Oklahoma City Thunder. Lou Dort
Yep.
and then Shea Alexander. I want to bring him up as well, just because of the way that they played. They defend. They get a lot of steals. They're out in the passing lanes. Great win that they had last night versus the LA Clippers. So I want to make sure that we at least acknowledge their defensive efforts. But I agree, Dyson Daniels is this year the defensive player of the year. The way he plays, I mean, you could tell he's an elite defender. You could tell he studies the plan. He understands offense and defensive schemes, and he's excelling at it. So, but I think this year he has been the defensive player of the year. He's very disruptive. Would be fascinating to watch as his career evolves, to see the impact that he can make on the defensive end, because you've seen guards like Marcus Smart, you've mentioned Drew Holiday is another, Gary Payton, all of these players, with the exception of Marcus Smart, they've gone on to win championships because of their ability to defend. So I think he has a chance to be an elite player for many years to come. And I think it'll be tremendous for him as a young player to achieve this and be able to figure out, what's his true impact on the game as you continue to improve, not only on the defensive end, but on the offensive end. But he's a phenomenal player. When you watch him, I mean, he's always in the lanes. And he has the ability what great defensive players have, which they can recover. Even if he doesn't get the steal, he can still recover and get himself back involved in the play. So, but I think he is the best defensive player this year and what he's been able to do for his team.
Yeah, I think Dyson Daniels for me is the defense player of the year. I want to throw some other names out there. Jaren Jackson Jr., of course, the previous winner of this award. A name that no one talks about, as I said last week, he's underappreciated. Ivica Zubac. He's defended the second most 2-point field goals out of anyone in the NBA this season. Only Brook Lopez has had to defend more. But I don't think Brook Lopez can be in that conversation just because of how the season's gone for the Milwaukee Bucks. But any other names that you want to throw in there, Scott?
No, I mean, he brought up, I always like to bring up the two teams or teams that are at the top of the standings and look at their rosters. Obviously, Evan Mobley has taken a step forward on both ends of the court this year. I know we're talking about defense right now, but Evan blocks shots, very switchable defender. He can, you can switch him onto a guard for a short period of time. He can play a small forward. So you like that about him. He's gotten stronger now where as a post defender, he can hold his position a lot better than what he was doing previously in his previous 3 years in the league. So I like the progress from him. OKC, best defensive team in the league this year. Lou Dort has always been an outstanding defender. That's what got him into the league. He's physical. You watch this guy, what is he, 6'3", maybe 6'4"? I've watched him defend centers this year sometime when Oklahoma City goes small. So very tough, very strong. Again, we talk about the ability to defend multiple positions and how important that is. definitely brings that to the table for that OKC team. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, our choice for MVP this year. And one of the reasons not only is his tremendous offensive ability that he's displayed this year, but always up there near the top in steals, is a good solid team defender, uses his length well. And that's one of the reasons too, along with a lot of other guys on that roster, why they're the number one defensive team in the league. So
Yeah, I think
kudos to both of those guys.
for defensive player of the year, though, it has to be the guy who's taken on the toughest assignments. If it's not going to be a prolific rim protector like a Rudy Gobert, it's got to be a guy who takes on the toughest assignments. That's why I can't have Shea in those conversations for me, because he doesn't guard the opponent's best player. They would be Lou Dort if you
No,
pick someone off the OKC Thunder.
I'm not saying that he would be the defensive player of the year, but I think as an MVP, he gives you a defensive effort though. He brings defensive integrity to the roster. I get your point about the defensive player of the year award, but I would not be surprised to see him possibly on the third team all defensive team though. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying he will, but he's no slouch defensively, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I have another awards-based question for you because there's been some great coaching across the league this season, and with less than a month now till the playoffs. Who are you guys looking at as the coach of the year? Because there's a whole bunch of names that we could have.
Right.
Obviously, the OKC Thunder and the Cavs have been the runaway leaders in the regular season, but then you've got the improvement of the Pistons. You, of course, got the Houston Rockets, who are still the second seed over in the West. Who are you guys looking at as the standout coach this season?
Let me start off by saying I've got to go back to my hometown, and I got to give it to JB Bickerstaff. To come into a team who was had the worst record in the NBA last season, and now to be solidly in the playoffs, in the sixth position in the Eastern Conference, a team that looks like it could win a series in the playoffs this year, the way he has them playing. And I know that they added Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley, who's having a career season this year in Detroit. But pretty much everybody's back. Obviously, we know Cade Cunningham has taken a huge step forward this year and shown why he's going to be one of the stars in this league for years to come. But that is hard to do, what he has done this year, to go into an atmosphere where losing was really pervasive in the building for the last few years. Not just last season when they were the worst, but they were, ever since Cade and those guys have been there, they had not won. And to make this big a jump, to me, I've got to go to JB Bickerstaff, because the energy he's brought to the group, the confidence he's given these guys, you can tell there's an accountability there that he's holding guys to, which is important in coaching. And I think there's a relatability there too as well, that those younger players were needing and longing for, and he's brought that to that group. So, again, there's nothing against the other candidates, because you bring up Ime Udoka, terrific job taking a team that wasn't in the playoffs last year, and now they're the number 2 seed over in the West. But they were showing signs a year ago. I mean, he is, from the time he's got there, they've been on an upward trajectory. So, if he were to win the award, I would not be upset at that, because he's done a terrific job. And then, Cleveland's made a big jump. Kenny Atkinson would be in the conversation for me, because, to put together the kind of season they have this year and have had 2 15-game win streaks in the season like this, you can't ignore that. So those probably would be my top 3 candidates this year. But I'm going to lead. I'm going to give the edge right now to JB Bickerstaff in Detroit.
What about you, Mr. Armstrong?
Well, traditionally, I always respect and I value Winnie. So Kenny Atkinson would traditionally, in my way of thinking, would probably, I would have said, would be my coach of the year. However, I cannot forget that the Detroit Pistons were on a 28-game losing streak just a year ago. And the difficult task of coming in there and just trying to right the ship. But he's gone far and beyond what he's been able to do this year. So JB Bickerstaff, whether he gets it or not, he has done a marvelous job. Okay, this is a monumental turnaround. What he's been able to achieve this year with this team, basically with the same team. And they've had some changes up top, but those are still Troy Weaver, who was the former GM of the team. Those are all of his players: Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Asur Thompson, Beef Stew. Those are his players. He drafted and Ivy, and Ivy's not there. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge how difficult that is. And to anyone who has had an opportunity to coach or run a team, I mean, you take over a team that lost 28 games in a row, and then all of a sudden we're expecting this team with its core group of the same team that experienced that. That's unheard of. Okay. Yeah. I think JB Bickerstaff and what him and his staff what they have done, and give those players credit. Yes. Cade Cunningham now is playing clearly at an elite level. He's playing like a top 10 player. He's playing like a true superstar. And he is the reason, or one of the reasons, that they have made this monumental turnaround. So I think it has to be JB. I mean, when you watch them, they're playing with energy. They had a great win the other night versus the Miami Heat on the road, and they're just plugging away. And I agree with Scott. I think it's realistic to whoever they face in the first round.
Right. Yeah.
That they can win. They have nothing to lose. I mean, so I like where this team is trending. Do I dare say, Scott, it's early to say it, but this team has a chance. I mean,
that's crazy.
They have a chance. I mean, that's even crazy for me. And I'm looking. You guys know we're rooting. We're from Detroit. We're rooting for our home team. But the Detroit Pistons, I mean, wow, you have to take your hat off. You have to salute them. I mean, this has been amazing.
Mo, you know how hard it is within a 12-month period to change a mindset in the locker room where 12 months ago you were expecting to lose. You hear me? Mm-hmm. Now, this team you see come out on the floor expects to win. Mm-hmm. That is a real serious change that we're witnessing each time this team steps on the floor. When I watch this Pistons team now, you forget about what happened last year now, because these guys look like, oh, this is us. We belong here. This is what we can do. Mm-hmm. And and I'm sure this was always in Troy Weaver's mind when he was assembling this talent, that this is what these guys could eventually become. Just so happens that JB Bickerstaff as the coach was the right steward to help lead these guys in this direction, he and his staff. Because, and a head coach will tell you, it's never all just about him. It's about your staff too. So he give credit to the staff there, because they're guys, they're constantly working with these players, especially these younger group, in terms of development, not only skill development, but the mental development, watching film with these guys, helping them see and learn situations better. And so really been impressed with what I see. I don't think any of us could have predicted this big a turnaround. Yeah, I expected.
I don't think even
they were going to be better this year.
Big a turnaround.
Yeah, no, quite. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, if anybody told you that, but what we're watching, look, they're just a game out of the 5th spot from Milwaukee. They could end up being the 5th seed, not just the 6th seed. So I can't recall a change this big since I've been following the NBA, even well before I got into the NBA, where a team had the worst record like that. Now we're talking about, 12 months later, we're talking about this team having a chance. Not only they're going to be in the playoffs, but have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Truly remarkable story.
What have you guys made of the coaching debut for your second favorite podcaster after me, Mr. JJ Redick, over with the Los Angeles Lakers?
BJ's out there. I'm gonna let BJ start on that one. He's in LA, so he watches them more. And I've watched them, and obviously I'll weigh in. But I want to hear what BJ has.
The task at hand, your first coaching job, is first of all to coach the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay, that comes with pressure all into itself. Then the first, team that he's assigned LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Okay, that comes with expectations. So clearly there's a learning curve that's needed. And JJ has done, I think he's done a really nice job in his first year of coaching. On top of that, they make a small trade that changes his team. They trade Anthony Davis, and then they bring in Luka Doncic. So he takes a job that he's never done before as the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers franchise. Then he has to coach LeBron James, and now he has to coach LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and then manage the expectations of what that means of being a Lakers head coach. In coaching two of the very best players currently now in the NBA. One certainly is arguably is in the conversation as one of the best, greatest players of all time, right? So I think overall he's done a really, really nice job. The thing that I really respect about what JJ has done is he really put together a very nice staff. I thought his staff has been terrific, right? He's the head coach. Clearly, he makes the final call. But Nate McMillan and these guys that he has on his staff, he's put together an elite staff. And I think if there's anything we should take from what JJ has done is he's surrounded himself with very competent people to help him.
McMillan, Scott Brooks, Bob Bayer, Greg St. Jean, Lindsey Harding, and Bo Levesque.
Yeah, he's the I happen to know. Yeah, I know many of those guys personally, and they're really competent people when it comes to the NBA. So I think he's done an above average job, right? Clearly out here in LA, we must hold him to the standard, which is a championship. Okay. I don't know if they're going to achieve that this year. I happen to probably be in the minority out here of saying when you look at this team, but overall, I'm impressed with the way he has conducted himself, the way he's handled the team, the way the team has actually played. I think with all of the changes and all of the things that have occurred this year, for him to have this team, where are they? They're like somewhere in the top 6, right? They were number 2.
They're 4. They're 4.
Yeah, 4. Right. I think that, and give JJ credit, right? I give credit where credit is due. That's tough to come into this type of situation. So I really respect the job he has done, and you know what, and to see where it goes. But I couldn't anticipate. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season they were going to be 4th, I mean, at one point they were like 2nd in the conference. I wouldn't have said that, but I have to give him credit. And I like the way they play. I like the style that they play. I think the players seem like they enjoy playing for him. And, it'd be interesting to see over the years how he kind of settles in. But I think overall he's done a really good job, and he looks to be a good hire for the LA Lakers.
Couple points I want to add in real quickly. As a former coach, and then, when JJ got this job, and JJ obviously is someone I worked with when he was a player in Orlando. BJ expressed the enormity of the job he took on being the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most iconic sports franchises in the world. give him credit for as not having any experience to go out and hire two former head coaches, guys who had been in that hot seat in Scott Brooks and Nate McMillan. Start there and then filling out the rest of his staff with very quality assistant coaches who like BJ mentioned, very knowledgeable about the NBA. So you always want to balance your staff and have people around you that can not only be, following loyal to you and your message, but also bring a difference and bring some strengths or experiences that you don't have that you are willing to weigh into. And as the head coach and CEO of that staff, you've got to be willing to give and take with that. And obviously, JJ has been doing that this season. So kudos to him for that. And one other thing that I look at is just when I watch teams, just how prepared teams are coming into game in and game out, and how teams execute coming in and out of timeouts, or make adjustments coming out at halftime, or like I said, coming in and out of timeouts, making those same adjustments. And the Lakers have done a very good and solid job of that. And that's where JJ is putting his handprint on this organization and on this basketball team. So be interesting to continue to watch him grow into this role. The unique thing about working for the Lakers, though, and BJ touched on this, is that his lens is always going to be about, did you bring a championship? I mean, that's his North Star. Whereas if you were coaching at some of the other organizations, your North Star in terms of the general public or fan base may be that you're consistently making the playoffs, and that is displaying some excellence. Well, in Lakerland, it's about titles. So let's see how that whole thing wears, not only this season, but in seasons to come. I think that will be ultimately determinative in terms of just how well JJ is doing out there in Los Angeles. And I know that, look, that's a lot of added pressure, but that's the reality of the situation. There are, a few organizations that have that standard, and he is at one of those, being the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that he's basically in his first year had to coach two different teams. The first team with Anthony Davis, you're looking to funnel the defense to Anthony Davis and play that style of basketball. And now with Luka Doncic, it's a completely different kind of persona of the team. With the Anthony Davis lineups this season with JJ Redick, the Lakers averaged 34 3-point attempts per game, which was fourth last in the NBA. But since the trade, the Lakers are averaging 42 3-pointers per game per 100 possessions, which is second highest in the entire NBA. So mid-season, this team has changed their entire offensive identity. With LeBron and AD, they command a lot of attention from the defense, but they don't draw doubles on the perimeter quite like a guy like Luka Doncic does, where they have to trap him to get the ball out of his hands.
No question.
Now adding Luka into this mix, they're able to generate a high volume of 3-point shots in the way that the Cavaliers or the Celtics do. So they've changed the identity of their team, not only at the start of the season with a new coach, but mid-season, they've changed their offensive strategy as well. So with saying all of that, teams need time to gel and so on and so forth, but Luka is obviously a generational talent, and it's easy for guys to play alongside him on the offensive end. How serious are you taking these guys as contenders? Because you guys have both said it now. It's a championship is the standard they hold them to. How close or how far are they from looking like a team that can actually win the championship?
Let me just add one thing to the point you're making, Mo, because I believe, obviously, when they made this trade, and you talk about now the sizable increase in 3-point attempts, I believe this is how JJ Redick always really wanted to play coming in the door anyway.
He's a 3-point shooter.
And so by person, he was the 3-point shooter. And he when you listen to his analysis a lot when he was working with ESPN, he talked about the math and the importance of the 3-point shot. And so going and get a player like Luka Doncic who shoots a much higher volume of 3-point shots than did Anthony Davis, of course that number is going to go up. But to the heart of your question about how far do I think they can go, I think the Lakers can be definitely a formidable foe in this playoff race. I think the West is wide open, with the exception of OKC. Again, we're talking regular season basketball right now. OKC has clearly separated themselves as the top team in that conference, if not the league at large. And their next step is to perform and win 3 7-game series to make it to the finals, that being OKC. But you get 2 generational players, great players together, LeBron James, who BJ talked about earlier, who we all know will go down as one of the game's greatest players. Luka Doncic is in the midst of his Hall of Fame career right now. So anytime you can put 2 guys like that on the floor and play in a 7-game series, you're going to have a chance to win because you've got tons of experience. They're going to pose a lot of different defensive challenges for whoever they're playing against. My big question still will remain is their lack of size, to go all the way through the Western Conference. And I know the early returns since Luka has been there defensively, the Lakers were playing pretty well defensively before he got there. And then when he came on, it kind of continued in terms of the numbers. I think they were one of the top 10 defensive teams here as of late. But I'm still not all the way sold that they're going to be able to carry that defensive, I don't want to, mindset, but just defensive efficiency as a team throughout the playoffs. That's my biggest question. I'm not saying that they can't, but I got to see it as if they can do that and then somehow make up for their lack of size, because there's only one center that they're playing, and that's Jackson Hayes.
Yeah, it's like they've got size at the other positions.
Right, but they just don't have size at the center position. But so what's going to happen? Obviously, LeBron is going to have to play a lot more inside as they move forward in the playoffs when rotations shorten up, and so that'll be interesting to see. For me, it'll be dependent upon who they match up against. Would I be shocked to see them make it to a conference final? The answer to that is no. I would not be shocked at that. They could do that. On the other end, would I be shocked if they had an earlier exit? I wouldn't be shocked at that either. So it'll be interesting to watch them, and I think we can dive into it deeper once the seedings are set and the first round matchups are made. Can really dive into how they're matching up with those, whoever they're matched up with in the first round, and what their path looks like to get to the Western Conference Finals.
BJ, you talk very often on this show about roster construction. If you're looking at this Lakers roster right now, what do they need to add if they can't win a championship this season? What are the kind of weaknesses in their roster that need to be addressed? Because this is a team they put together mid-season, and they've obviously not had the chance to go and get all the signings they want or make all the moves that they want. But from a roster construction perspective, how are you looking at this Lakers squad?
Well, I think JJ is going to evolve and to figure out his style and his philosophy of how he wants to play. And at the beginning of the season, you guys mentioned it earlier, this was a LeBron James, he was the focal point as far as ball handling, distribution, so forth and so on. Now, all of a sudden, you have 2 players that are going to demand the ball. So I think JJ and their staff are going to have to figure out their philosophy, their brand of basketball, and what is that going to look like? LeBron James is at a moment in his career where he's probably not the same downhill player that he once was, where he could just overwhelm you with his athletic ability. He's probably going to have to play more of a power forward or small ball type of forward position at this stage. And they're going to have to figure out how to share the basketball because both of those players, him and Luka, need the ball in their hand. So I think it's going to come to where they feel they can best find that balance that they're looking for because they have two players that are capable of carrying the game. LeBron James, not as much as he once could, but Luka is still, entering into his prime. And I don't know what that looks like. If you ask me what this team should look like, I have no idea. Do they want to play fast? Do they want to be a big team? Do they want to be a team that executes in the half court? I don't know how they're really going to settle into using Luka Doncic because he's clearly the future of the organization. However, you still have a LeBron James team, so that's going to come with the expectations. And I don't know cap wise. I think probably Scott would be more equipped to answer that. Is how you're going to build a team with the way the structure is currently, the salary structures. So they have a lot of things that they have to deal with. However, those are pretty good problems to have if you have Luka Doncic and LeBron James. You start there. You would hope that many of the players that they currently have on their roster will develop from within. That's what you're hoping for. Because I don't know how many more years that you're going to have LeBron James playing at a very high level. He's coming off of an injury. And as you age, you tend to, there will be little things that will pop up. So if they can get, whether that's Austin Reeves or Jackson Hayes or what are those players, Rui Hachimura, to really emerge, I think that's probably will be their best case scenario. If not, you in the words of, the Miami Heat, either you're competing for a championship or you're blowing it up. So I think will be at both of those extremes, depending on how things turn out for them during the course of the season, or in this case, as they head into the playoffs.
The irony of the Miami Heat now being a play-in team.
Yeah.
We got 3 weeks exactly left of the regular season. Now, for some teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers, the OKC Thunder, they're kind of cemented in their positions. They can just kind of coast out the rest of the regular season. It's March in the NBA. You see a lot of guys resting at this time of the year. You see a lot of random kind of lineups that you wouldn't usually see. But over the next 3 weeks, which teams are we looking at as these next 3 weeks being the most crucial part of their schedule? Because we just spoke about the Lakers with their new look team. They're going to be trying to find their form ahead of the playoffs. But which other teams are we looking at over the next 3 weeks heading into the postseason that this is the most crucial stretch for them?
Well, I'm going to start in the Western Conference. I think I'm looking at 3 teams: Golden State, Minnesota, and the LA Clippers. All are going to be fighting to make sure that they get that 6th seed and don't have to play in the play-in. And so that's going to be fascinating to watch those 3 organizations compete. Every game matters and means something to each of them. And you can make a case for all 3 of those teams to end up into that spot. Personally, I like the Timberwolves. I just, a real believer in Anthony Edwards and what he's, who he is as a player. I believe that Julius Randle and DiVincenzo are now starting to figure out, and really fit in, and those other guys fitting in with them. Jaden McDaniels is playing a lot better. So I think the schedule slightly favors them in these last 3 weeks too, to really make a push and get into that 6th spot. But look, Kawhi Leonard has been healthy, knock on wood for him and the LA Clippers. They played a real tough game against the Thunder yesterday, had a chance to win that game. And Ty Lue does a terrific job coaching that basketball team. So they'll be right there. And then Golden State, thankfully Steph Curry's not gonna miss much more time. I think he's joined the team now on this trip, so expect to see him back in action here shortly. So that's going to be a fascinating push the last 3 weeks. I'm going to really be focusing in on those 3 teams to see who secures that sixth spot in the Western Conference.
If you had to predict it right now, the order of the Warriors, Timberwolves, and the Clippers, how would you predict that, Scott?
I can say, well, I can tell you, I'm gonna go T-Wolves, Warriors, Clippers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about it, as you look at it, all of those teams are just 2 games away from the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Memphis Grizzlies can't fall asleep, nor can the Lakers.
And the Grizzlies have lost 3 straight.
Yeah, and so that's within reach too. I'm sure those teams, you got to get to 6 before you can get to 5. But so that'll be interesting to watch that. But that's how I would rank the teams right now in terms of who I think ends up in that 6th spot.
BJ, who are you looking at with the last 3 weeks of the season being the most crucial stretch?
Well, I just think as far as excitement here, you have to stay out in the Western Conference. And I mean, you guys have identified whether it's Golden State, Minnesota, and the Clippers. They are all 1 game separates them. And they're breathing right on, they're right there with the Lakers, who are the 4th, and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Clippers, they lost a tough game last night to the OKC Thunder, but they are really playing great basketball. I just hope that Kawhi Leonard can stay healthy. If he stays healthy, that's going to be a tough out. So I think those 3 teams probably the most exciting. There's a lot that's made. Steph Curry, he's been out now, and you could see a 6-3 matchup possibly, which could be the Lakers and Golden State. So that would be exciting, by most theories of, that's what the NBA would want. But overall, I think those are probably the 3 most competitive teams. And I could easily see the Clippers being in the top 6 at the end of this. I could easily see the Minnesota, who we all picked probably wouldn't be in this position. And certainly Golden State now feel good about their chances now with Jimmy Butler. So it's going to be very competitive here. And just as an outside shot, I highly unlikely suddenly the Phoenix Suns now are.
Oh no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you what. I when you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I'm not. Those guys are too good. They have a puncher's chance. They have a fighter's chance, and I wouldn't want to face Kevin Durant in any 1 game. I definitely wouldn't want that. I don't want that. But I think we probably identified those 3 teams, and that's probably the most interesting out of all of them.
Yeah, what's crazy is you look at the top 8 teams in the West. They're all capable of winning a first-round series.
No,
when the playoffs come around, usually there's a couple series where you're like, okay, the higher seeded team is definitely going to go through. But this Western Conference, the top 8, I could see any of those teams advancing past the first round, which I don't remember the last time I've looked at the NBA standings and thought this. But that is another week of the Hoop Genius podcast. Appreciate you, Scott and BJ, as always. We're going to be here for the next 3 weeks of the regular season. And then when the playoffs come around, we're here every day. So make sure you subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts from. And there'll be a lot more basketball talk on the way. March Madness continues to roll on. The NBA season continues to harp, and the playoffs are around the corner. Until next time, get buckets.